Thank you so much, and welcome to everyone that's attending today. So my name's Zoe and I'm the club manager at Anytime Fitness in Mornington. So we have a few clubs represented today. So I just want to welcome each of them: Mornington, Hastings, Rosebud. We've got Tarneit West, Wyndham Vale and Armstrong Creek. So welcome to each and every one of you to today's session. So if you're a member of Anytime Fitness or follow us on socials, then you're probably aware of the support of RUOK. We believe that health comes in many forms, so not just physical, but mental, social, and checking in and taking care of these areas is so incredibly important. So being in the situation we find ourselves in right now, a pandemic and a lockdown, it's important more than ever to look after ourselves and each other. And that's what this session is all about today. So we are so lucky to have the incredible Megan Barrow, an RUOK ambassador, to speak to us today. And I have no doubt that you'll be encouraged by her story and the RUOK message. So let me welcome Megan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello, there you are.
Hi.
Welcome,
and I'm realizing when you get in front of camera, it's like, okay, I've really got the COVID hair going at the moment. So just bear with.
The first time I've done mine in about 4 months.
A very unnatural, dirty blonde at the moment. So, but anyway.
All right. Well, welcome, Megan. Thank you so much for what you're going to share today, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. So, usually when I do, obviously these presentations this year has been a bit unusual for us all. So usually these presentations are done in front of an audience in person. So this year's been very different to delivering these online. And during the RUOK week, I did do them with a presentation, a slide presentation that we usually use in person. And I found that incredibly difficult to not see faces and to be just presenting to a presentation screen. So, so Zoe and I talked, and I'm just going to kind of go through the presentation with you face to face. And you can absolutely access the RUOK website has incredible resources, including a presentation. I think it's last year's presentation, but most of the details will be covered in the presentation, and we've got a link for that. And yeah, there's amazing resources. So most of what I talk about here today will be covered on the website. But just to give you an overview, I'll start by telling you my story, my mental health background and story, just to give you some perspective about why I'm an ambassador. And then we'll go through a little bit about RUOK, the organisation, then the signs to look out for, to sort of see, to sort of pick up on if someone's not doing okay. We'll then talk about if you're ready, if you're the right person to have the RUOK presentation. And then we'll go into the actual RUOK 4 steps of how to ask. So that's a little bit of a summary. My story will take about 10 minutes. It's a big story. So I do the royal we. I need to sort of summarize it in many ways, but so allow 10 minutes for that, which I'll jump into. And I do want to also say that there may be sensitive matter in here. So I'm just giving a trigger warning that I will be talking about suicidal thinking, anxiety and depression and agoraphobia. So just a heads up in case you're sensitive to that. But please, whilst I see some of you, I can see some lovely faces up on my screen. If you need to turn your computer, your camera off or take a break or whatever, as Zoe said, there's a recording. So I will not take it personally in any way. So do what you need to do if you're finding it a bit tough. But as an ambassador, the community ambassadors are a team of volunteers around Australia, and we generally have lived experience of mental health issues, whether it be ourselves having cared for someone with a mental health issue, or sadly, people who have lost someone to suicide. So the community ambassadors, we really live and breathe the Are You OK message, and we do this. We take time out of our schedule. I run my own business, so I actually lose money doing this. There's no one paying me to do this. But I do it because I genuinely believe in this message. I'm also a Beyond Blue ambassador, but this message that I can deliver about the importance of a conversation and how it can truly save a life, and I genuinely mean that. I think the byline is change a life, but I genuinely believe it can save a life. And so to sort of give you some perspective, I'm going to tell you my story. I've had anxiety my entire life. So as a child, even as a toddler, I just remember, I was always pigeonholed and described as the shy girl. So, Megan's shy. That's almost how I was always introduced. Megan won't talk. No one really spoke to me about my feelings or anything, but I was very much labeled as the shy girl. School was really tough because of that. And even to the point that, what people didn't realize is I'd have lots of thoughts going around in my head. I'd be worrying, I'd worry literally in prep about, what do I have to do tomorrow? Do I have to do a somersault? Do I have to do show and tell? Will the kids play with me? And then at night, I wouldn't sleep, worrying about what had happened, over analysing the whole day. So this is really sort of in my genes. There's nothing we can say happened to me. My mum will say I kind of popped out that way. I was just that very quiet baby, very quiet right from the get-go. I'd always have lots of nausea, lots of time off school, even in primary school, with lots of nausea. But this was, to give some perspective, I'm 49, so this was in the 70s and no one talked about having anxiety. There was no mental health discussion whatsoever. The closest that mum ever came to was seeing a GP who thought I was having maybe migraines without vomiting. So they kind of knew I was stressing, but we never really talked about it. Mum was quite kind in giving me a lot of time off school as needed. But I kind of just thought that was how I was going to be. That was my life, unfortunately. Moseyed on into high school, and at the age of 14, I had my first suicidal thoughts. It's actually, this period has actually been quite triggering for me, this Are You OK presentations. I'm not sure why. I mean, it's obviously a sad time, but yeah, it was a really difficult time. I was being bullied at school and home, and literally had no one to turn to. I'm the oldest, so I had a younger sister. I'm the oldest of all my cousins. I didn't have any. I went to a parent and I went to a teacher, and they both said, what do you want me to do? So interestingly, I was reaching out, almost wanting someone to sort of go through the Are You OK? And I was kind of thrown away. So I knew that I was on my own. And for anyone who's had suicidal thinking, it's something that you remember everything about that moment. I can literally, and I don't live too far from the very spot where between a train station, getting off the platform and walking to my mum's car, I could probably go to the 5-metre radius of where I had that thought. I just remember it so distinctly. I felt a burden. I felt like no one cared about me. I was unloved, that it wouldn't matter, and I was just in such excruciating pain. I no longer wanted to be here. And what I do say, which is probably not a positive, but is almost, I'm thankful for my anxiety, that it was because of my anxiety I overthought it and just kind of thought I just have to bear with it. So I got through this period somehow. I still don't really know, like, I want to go and give that 14-year-old me the biggest hug. say things are going to be okay. But I got through, and I sort of adapted at home by sort of removing myself from, you know, from the situation, and same with that school. And I kind of adapted and sort of worked out how I would get through. So I got through school okay. Then when I was 19, I had my first panic attack. Had no idea. There was nothing I can really pinpoint as to why it might have happened, but I was out in a cinema with friends from university, and all of a sudden sitting in the chair, and my heart started beating out of my chest. Felt like it was racing. I was racing a million miles an hour. Felt like I couldn't breathe, like I took a gasp of air, and also felt out of body. And I thought I was having a heart attack. So interestingly for me, I don't say anything. Well, back then I didn't. So I knew I was terrified. And what I did was put my fingers on my wrist pulse and checked to see my heart was beating, and just kept checking my heartbeat the entirety of the movie. Kind of settled after 10 minutes, had no idea what it was. I was terrified, didn't tell anyone afterwards, and just thought, well, that was frightening. Let's pretend that didn't happen. But things were kind of, I was probably retrospectively sort of hitting a depression and socially removing myself from people, and my anxiety, again, still no diagnosis that I had anxiety, and was starting to change my behaviour a bit. Probably 6 months later, I had another one, woke up in bed, and even more frightening this time. This is the one that I really consider my real first major. And yeah, woke up, felt out of breath again, felt like my heart wasn't beating, almost skipped a beat, then raced a million miles an hour, had chest pains this time. Again, felt out of body, that I couldn't breathe. And I tried to settle myself that I wasn't having a heart attack, that a heart attack is pain down the left arm. So what does the brain do? I started having a pain down the left arm. So I just frozen in my bed. And this is a time I was 19. My mum, for some reason, was folding my washing, and she walked into my room to pop them into a dresser drawer, and I didn't say a word. So again, that in me of not wanting to bother people, and not wanting to make a fuss, but also overthinking, oh my God, if this is a heart attack, I don't want to think about it, but I'm terrified, and sort of this spiral. I had these over 3 consecutive nights. And on the 3rd night, I prayed to God, even though I'm not religious, and said, if I survived the night, I truly didn't even think I was going to survive to the next morning. I'll go to the doctor. And I went to the first of 7 doctors that I turned up with these symptoms, and no one diagnosed me with having a panic attack or anxiety. So they would say, look, your heart's fine, but we're not sure what it is. So, of course, without a resolution, my anxiety brain just went into overdrive, and I thought they were missing something. And I just slowly started to sort of get frightened about doing anything that may cause this. To the point that with a really horrible personal situation that invaded work, personal, social, family, I was not coping, and the panic attacks were just all the time. They were happening at work and in front of people, and I'd collapse on the floor thinking that, not fainting, but thinking I can't move, I don't want to move. Everyone was really concerned about me, but essentially I had a nervous breakdown. Left a meeting, collapsed into my then boyfriend's arms, who took me home, carried me to the family couch, and soon after resigned from work. And essentially that couch was where I lived for 3 years. So I spiraled into agrophobia, which is by definition, it's a fear of open spaces. And most people know agoraphobia, people are stuck in their homes. But the best definition I saw was that it's a fear of fear itself. And that's the most accurate definition I've seen, that whilst you are stuck in your homes, that is because you are so terrified that you're going to die or have a panic attack. You don't want to do anything to risk these feelings. So I was equally terrified if I had to go outside, like say to my psychologist, or if, you know, Christmas Day, my mum wasn't letting me get out of Christmas Day, I'd be lugged over there in terror. But I was equally terrified when I was on my own. So I lived with my mum and sister. They both worked full time. So the days would be terrifying, but even more so was night was really terrifying. If both of them had partners, so they'd go off to their partners on a weekend or over Easter or whatever it would be, and I'd be left alone, and me not wanting to cause anyone any fuss. I sort of, you know, I'd sort of say, please don't go, but I'd let them go. So, and I'd literally, like these kind of, you know, Easter I'd spend in the living room with the TV on 24/7, just try and, you know, obviously my boyfriend and I broke up. He remained a really amazing support network, but I lost all connections in this time. Like friends start supporting you, and then because they think, I saw someone talk about mental illness as it's not a casserole illness, meaning that if you have cancer, everyone's there supporting you and bringing you food and support and sitting with you and flowers and cards. And if you've got agoraphobia or depression, or, you know, that's not how people react. Hopefully that's starting to change. But yeah, so sort of to skim over, I know I'm sort of taking a bit of time with this, but got my at the 2-year mark, I decided that this was no way to live, and I sort of started a long road to recovery. So that second to third year was me recovering, but still not really doing much, and then kind of leapt into returning to normal life. I mean, my goal was literally to have a job and to start meeting people again and reconnecting with the world and being normal, to not be accused of what do you do with your world. I mean, what do you do with your days? And so return to work was did it quite quickly, really, considering, and 10 years of being in the workplace, and lots of roller coaster, but kind of kept going, gritted teeth, even if I sort of dipped with anxiety. But then at the 10-year mark, so 12 years ago now, I dipped into clinical depression. So this was the first time that it was actually properly diagnosed. In agoraphobia, I also had suicidal thinking, I guess, you know, probably not surprising. And anxiety and depression are very much interconnected. So people with depression that have clinical depression are likely to be more anxious, and people with anxiety also are going to be susceptible to depression. So, but yeah, this was at 37. I had to take 6 weeks off work. But at that point, I actually got on the right medication for me. So there's a lot of stigma about mental health medication, and for me, it's really important if we want to encourage the conversations and support that it's a health condition. Some people, not everyone, but some people do need medication, and I think you'll have heard that I've suffered my whole life, and at 37 I got on the right medication and it changed my life. And that's not to say that anxiety just disappeared. The depression definitely slowly eased, but I was just mentally stronger. It was like a fog lifted out of my brain, and I was like, this is what I remember saying to my mum. I said, I now realize how I'm meant to have felt my entire life. It was just staggering to me. And with that clarity and strength, I was able to push through a lot more anxiety and exposure, and, you know, started to get on planes and, you know, live a really normal life. And since then, I've been happy and healthy. And that's not to say I still don't dip into depression sometimes, and it doesn't mean that I don't have a panic attack, but I manage it. Now I sort of have perspective and I know how to manage it. And if I'm having a tough day, I take it easy and start again tomorrow, so I don't spiral back fully. And that's been the ultimate freedom for me. But in this time, it's been a lot of disconnection and loneliness, and whether it was agoraphobia or the suicidal thinking or depression, I craved conversations. I craved people to notice me. I craved for people to say they cared and that I mattered, because when you're unwell, and I think it's really important to state that, and I notice it very much now that I'm very well, but when I dip, the logical thinking disappears. So whilst when I'm logical and well, if a friend doesn't contact me for 2 weeks, I don't think anything of it. I can, you know, even during COVID, it's like I can logically intellectualize that they're busy. It's nothing personal, whatever. When you're unwell, you don't see it that way. You are so unwell, you can't logically think or balance those thoughts of that you matter. And that's where Are You OK steps in. That Are You OK is very much about the help givers. So Are You OK is not about people that are unwell. That sits up at the Lifelines and Beyond Blues and Headspace and so forth, Black Dog, all those wonderful organisations. Are You OK sits down as a health promotion campaign to teach people that are well the importance of conversations to help someone that's not well. So Are You OK started back in 2009 by a gentleman called Gavin Larkin. He sadly passed away in 2011. So I've been involved with Are You OK since 2012, so a long time now, and I've seen it grown amazing, you know, exponentially. It's been incredible to watch it increase. Yeah, I sadly missed meeting him, but he started Are You OK from a loss. What many people don't realise is that Are You OK started from a suicide. Gavin lost his father to suicide. And I might give you, Zoe, a link to a video too, but I think it's on the Are You OK website. There's a great 4-minute video that we like to show in a presentation. I think it's called The Story of Are You OK, but I'll send the link, and it's quite confronting, but it's a real snapshot of Are You OK and where it's come. I think it's about 3 or 4 years old. But they share Gavin's father's last message. So he left a message to his son saying, major trigger warning here, that he's decided to end his life, that he hasn't really spoken to anyone for a number of weeks, except for the shop assistant. And so he's decided that he'll take his life. And that's the last message he left. And his son, and this is not about blame or anything like that, but his son thought, I wonder if I had have called him that day, whether that would have changed his mind. And I get shivers still, like I've got shivers right now, because I relate to that so much. Sometimes the simplest act, I've got some friends that are so busy. I've got one of my closest friends, she's been sleeping 2 hours. She works 12 hours days at the moment. She's back at university to start a new career, but she'll just send me a text, a silly video or an image. But I'm like, she's thought of me to do that. That's all that sometimes is needed. That's not to say when someone's unwell that it's as simple as that. But these are the things where don't underestimate how those smallest of connections and saying hello to someone and checking in with someone can really matter. So at this point, I do like to also state the, suicide rates, because they're quite staggering. And I know, we're a bit concerned about what might happen with COVID, and there's no clear indication at this point. But in case you're not aware, on average, 8 people die in Australia every day from suicide. So you have to, I'm not about, you know, that we shouldn't be shutting things down or COVID, but, you know, we're seeing all these COVID numbers or the road toll. I often liken it to the road toll. Where's the news story of how many suicides there's been every day? And we're learning more that there used to be this thing of that the media didn't talk about suicide or report suicides because they believed that increased suicides. And we know that's not true. It's actually, if someone's feeling suicidal, talking about it isn't going to increase their chances. It's actually more likely they feel it's not talking about it adds to the stigma. So destigmatizing it from talking about it. So you sort of think, you know, it's a massive toll that maybe we should be talking more readily about. But possibly even more frightening is for every death, it's estimated 30 people attempt to take their lives. So that's a lot of, and for me, I never actually got to an attempt. I was, for one, during Agrophobia, I was literally moments away, but I know that pain. And that's a lot of people in incredible pain and loneliness. And this won't, Are You OK? Is not necessarily thinking that we can save everyone, but I do believe that we can reduce that amount by having conversations and from people feeling connected. And that's essentially the vision of Are You OK? It's to live in a world where we're all protected and connected. Sorry, all connected and protected from suicide. So the connection is a really big point. So, and suicide and suicidality, we know, is a really complex issue, but there's more and more research happening every day, all the time, and we're learning more and more about what can protect us from suicide. And there's been some interesting research. Sorry, as I'm looking at my notes, there's a few notes that I've got here that I'd normally have on screen. But what I thought was really interesting is there's 3 forces at play. There's a theory of there's 3 forces at play, and it sort of goes to show, again, the Are You OK message and how it can potentially help. So the 3 forces that increase the risk of suicide is someone feeling alone, someone feeling they're a burden, and having the means to end their life. So the connection perspective of what Are You OK is about, you know, there's a chart of all these sort of intersecting. So if you think that if you remove the alone aspect, the loneliness aspect, and sort of with that, hopefully making them feel less of a burden, that's separating the major point of the connector of the 3 forces at play that might increase someone's likelihood of suicide. So again, it's sort of, I think it's really important to think a lot of what I'll be saying about Are You OK, or what you're hearing, is very simple, and it should be quite intuitive. And I think it's important to realize that sometimes the simplest things are the most important and valuable things, that I think we underestimate that complexity. You know, I'm a marketer, and there's a great adage of the simplest is the hardest thing to achieve. And that kind of shows in terms of just how important simple things are. So if I leave you with nothing else other than the 4 steps to Are You OK, I think it's about really that as simple as checking in with someone, it can be so powerful. So how to know if someone's not okay is another aspect of the presentation that we go through. And last year, the Are You OK campaign was to trust the sign and trust your gut. So they did a lot of research, and I think you guys might have talked to it a bit. Zoe shared a wonderful 24-hour challenge that people did, and it was so wonderful to watch. And I have a feeling you might have touched on it, but RUOK do amazing research with what they're doing. So they always check in to see where the campaigns are sitting and in the Australians' mindset. And they realised last year after some research that a lot of people, the RUOK message has, grown so much, and most people know that, but there was fear of asking it, and there's still incredible fear to ask it. But last year's campaign was about, how do I know when to ask? So that's what the main campaign was about. And it really does go into trusting your gut, that if you notice someone has any changes of behaviour and you think they're not okay, to ask, are you okay? Don't overanalyze it. If you sense that someone is not the same or is showing signs, to ask. And I say that, worst case, and I know some are you okay questions don't go as planned, and that might be a question someone has at the end of this, but I kind of say the worst thing that can happen is they'll say, yeah, I'm fine. It's like, oh, okay, good. It's like, if that's the worst, if you're worried about someone actually being okay and them being offended by that, I mean, would they be offended by that? It would be, oh, that's okay, I just noticed that. So I kind of think of it from that perspective. But flip side, what a difference you might make if they're not okay. So some things to look out for. If you think about 3 buckets of what they're saying, what they're doing, and also their situation, what they're going through at the moment. So what they're saying, again, any changes of behavior, someone that's introverted that becomes extroverted, someone who's extroverted that's introverted. And I can do a bit of both with that. So I have, as you might notice, I'm no longer the shy girl, and I can sort of babble and talk to anyone just about these days. And so if I walk into a room and I don't say hi, and people, that's a sign that I may be struggling. So if I slink into an office, a client's office, and it's interesting. One time I was working in an office for a client, and I was really struggling one day, and I'd had a really rough weekend, and I just sort of sat down and didn't say anything. And I was always the person to say hi to this room, a room of boys that didn't say hi. And the next day they said, oh, were you okay yesterday? You were very quiet. And I said, oh, that would have been really helpful if you'd asked that yesterday. Because I actually slinked off to the toilet and bawled my eyes out. I was like, they don't even notice that I'm not okay. Like, it's sort of, I knew, and it wasn't attention seeking. It was just when you're not thinking logically, you think you don't matter. And then if someone doesn't ask if you're okay in a huge office, and you know that you're showing difference, you sort of think, oh, maybe I don't matter. But also conversely, that if I'm a bit anxious, I can go a bit hyper. So nothing scary, but I can talk a lot more. So, people that know me well might notice that I'm sort of racing in my conversation a bit more, and, do you need to settle down a bit, or whatever it might be, take a deep breath, whatever it might be. But also notice what they're saying in terms of, are they talking about being alone and feeling alone? You might have noticed a bit of that at the moment, and you're a community of people that, this is a big, I know that I do boxing once a week, and I also go to a gym, but I was really missing my boxing group. And it was my joy on a Friday lunchtime to go and meet, bunch and laugh with these people. And I really struggled sort of 4 weeks into the first lockdown. And I'm sure there's lots of people in this community that have really, really struggled with the lack of community. The gym is not always just about fitness, is it? It's often about community and group and seeing people and making friends. So if someone's talking about feeling alone or feeling a burden, they're signs that you maybe should actually listen. I do say that I think mental health gets a bad rap in terms of the attention seeker. you know, it's like, oh, here they go. They're talking about ending their life. And it's been quite comical in a lot of movies and TV shows. And it's quite cringeworthy for me to watch it now as we're getting, you know, some people call it woke, but, you know, as we're understanding more. And it's very rarely are people attention seeking. Very rarely do people actually say these things and they're just after someone to sort of, you know, pay them attention. If you hear my story, I'm more likely, even now, I probably only tell my mum and one friend. So I'll not tell anyone. And that's only because I've had really big conversations with both of them that they've said, please tell me. So if someone's saying these words, best to take it seriously. What are they doing? They're changes of behaviour. So everything from someone that would usually go to the gym that's no longer going, or someone that used to care about their appearance and no longer caring about their appearance. Hygiene, lack of, you know, those kind of things can be a sign that someone's struggling. You just don't care. Someone looking really tired or losing weight or putting on weight. I lose weight when I'm depressed. I lose 10 kilos like that. It just falls off me. So those kind of signs. And also just, you know, are they talking differently about lack of care? You know, are they not going to events that they would say that they're going to? All of a sudden, do they not care about the football finals, yet their team's in the football finals? Like any changes of behaviour. And the third one is to pay attention to what's going on in people's lives. So at the moment, that's why obviously COVID, we're all going through a shared experience, but often and usually we're not going through a huge shared experience of everyone having a tough time. So pay attention to things like, is someone you know going through a relationship breakup, a divorce, separation? Has someone lost their job? Do you know financial issues? Have they lost someone? Has a connection died? A partner died? Parents died? Whatever it might be. And one of my big aha moments was a couple of years ago with an RUOK board member talking in the media actually about suicide doesn't always touch people that are depressed. So the situation is a big one to consider, that sometimes people who take their life sadly have never had depression in their life. All of a sudden, they're sort of hit by a major trauma or something they're not coping with. And obviously COVID at the moment is one of those things. People who've lost their job and things not coping, and, you know, they may never have had depression in their life. And they don't have the means or the resources to know how to get through it. And so the other three areas to think about in terms of when to ask, are you okay? So again, that was what they're saying, what they're doing, and what's going on in their life. But before you ask, are you okay? It's also good to cross-check that you're the right person to ask, are you okay? So this is a really important step before I launch into the 4 steps, because I kind of preface this by, if you need to be asked, are you okay? You're not the best person to be asking, are you okay? So if you're struggling and you just, as much as you probably want to help someone because you've got that empathy, be prepared that this might be a really tough conversation, and the person that's not coping really needs to be honoured by your time and your ears and attention. So if you're not in that headspace and you think that you might end up in tears with the story, you're probably not the best person to ask. So with this, it's important to state that if you're not the right person, that doesn't mean you just walk away from the situation. You then go to someone else and say, hey, I'm a bit concerned about John. Can you go and have a chat with him? Especially in the workplace, like you know, or the gym or whatever, like wherever you might be. It might be that you notice someone crying on a treadmill. Well, you may not even know them. So maybe go off to Zoe and say, look, I just noticed that person on the treadmill is crying. Can you keep an eye on them? Or do you want to have a bit of a conversation with them later? So when you notice these things, don't just leave it. See if there's a more appropriate person that might be able to have that conversation. So other things to think about before you ask, are you okay, is, are you prepared? As I mentioned, this might be a really difficult conversation. Are you prepared to sit there and hear what they have to say? Are you prepared to sit with them for some length of time? You might be thinking this is a 5-minute conversation. Is it okay if it blows out for an hour? I was dropping off a number of years ago. I was dropping off some things to a friend. She just lived around the corner. I ended up there for about 5 hours because I quickly realized she wasn't okay. And she kept pushing me away. And I said, I'm just going to sit with you. I'm just going to sit with you all day. I'm just going to sit with you until I knew she was out of that crisis point. And I went and got her food and just sat with her, essentially. We didn't have to talk. So sometimes, you know, the best laid plans sort of, but are you in a position to allow that time if someone desperately needs that help? One of my, it's not favorite questions, but a really memorable question I got in an Are You Okay presentation was at the end, someone said, it was quite an extrovert, and he said, I loved it. It was fantastic. Now, I am so busy. I just have things going on left, right, and center. I've always got something on. I'm doing all this social stuff and at work. And so if I notice if I notice someone's not doing well, is it okay if I just say I've only got 5 minutes to talk? And I said, well, it might be okay. Like that may be all they need. But would you say the same thing if someone was having a heart attack in front of you? Would you say, I've only got 5 minutes for CPR, but I'll do that for 5 minutes and dash off to my meeting? I think we need to reframe our thinking that for someone that's critically ill, it is that, and I'd hate to be macabre, but that life and death, it can be that critical at times. That's that moment in time that you could change if you spend the time with someone. So have a think about that. Are you better finding someone else who has more time? Have you picked the right moment? So again, if it's someone that's dashing off, knowing, you know, I have to prepare a meal for the kids, or I'm off to a train, you know, I have to catch my train, or I'm off to a meeting, they're not the times, obviously, to have to check, are you okay? Sometimes this takes a bit of planning. So have a think. I know John goes to lunch at 12:30, so I might ask to join him. Or I might just ask, I know they grab a coffee at this time. I'll see if they want to do a coffee. So have a think about those aspects, and also an appropriate place. Like again, if I use the analogy of someone on the treadmill, Zoe going up to the person on the treadmill is probably not the right place to do that. So it might be, you know, as they're leaving, or you know their routine, that when they leave the counter or whatever it might be, you sort of say, hey, you know, can I have a quick chat with you? So something a bit subtle, that you're not bringing attention to the whole room about this situation as well. So do it with compassion, that if they're struggling and trying to hide things, that, they don't want the whole world to know they're struggling. So have a think about the most appropriate place to do it. If it's a group class and you sort of, you know, you just sort of quietly grab someone at the end, so not making a fuss. So have a think of those aspects before you ask, are you okay? And now we're finally on to the asking, are you okay? So are you okay? This year's campaign has been, there's more to say. I've forgotten, there's more to say. Sorry, I'm on mirroring, so there's more to say. I'm sort of getting used to it. There's more to say after are you okay? So again, there's that question in the Australian psyche of, okay, we love the concept, but what do you say when someone's not okay? And Are You OK's always had 4 steps, but this is about really highlighting that it's actually more than just asking, are you okay? So there's the 4 steps is to ask, are you okay? Listen without judgment, encourage action, and then to check in. So there's an acronym ALEC, A-L-E-C, if that helps you remember it. So the first step, ask. So again, ask, are you okay? I can skim over this really. Essentially, I say, put it in your own language. It doesn't have to sound like you've just heard an Are You Okay presentation. Okay, it doesn't have to look like you've looked at the notes. Just put in your conversational language. What is good is if you have noticed changes of behaviour, whether it's something they've said or done or a situation they're going through, bring that up. So say, I know that I just want to check in with you if everything's all right, because I know that I hear that you lost your job. Do you mind if can I have a quick chat with you, because I noticed that you're crying on the treadmill. Just want to have a quick chat to, I'm concerned. Do you need to have a chat? So try and make it natural, but if there's something that in your gut, or you've seen or observed that is not right, bring that into the reason as to why you're asking, are you okay? Now, the second step is something that interestingly gets the most feedback probably, and that's listen without judgment. So it's really important that I heard a great phrase from one of the organisations I presented to about the accidental counsellor. So I think in our nature, we want to counsel someone to be better. We want to walk away from a situation and feel like I've solved that problem. The Are You Okay message is, whilst we encourage action, it's not to think that you can solve the problem there and then in this conversation. You're not expected to. The gift and value you give someone just listening is incredible. And again, I can relate that when you've got all these thoughts and you feel like you don't matter, if someone's just willing to, on the phone or sit next to you and listen to you and not offer any comparison or one of the most powerful things I think anyone could say on this is, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I'm sorry you're going through that, but I hear you. I believe what you're saying. And you don't have to say that, but just sitting there states to someone that you're listening. You're not arguing. You're not second guessing what they're saying. You just listen without judgment. Don't say how you got through a similar situation. Don't say, when I went through my divorce. It's irrelevant. You're not the same person. But respect what they've said to you in terms of how they're feeling. And this listening might take some time. It might take time. And even the Are You Okay bit and the listening might bounce. It might be a few times where they start talking, you're listening, but you have to go back to sort of encouraging the conversation. Third step is to encourage action. So check if they're seeing a doctor. I mean, the first go-to is depending on where they're sitting in how bad they are. You might want to encourage them to see a doctor or a mental health professional. So ask if they're seeing someone. If you can play a role in helping, if they're not and you think that they might need to, can you help find a doctor? Can I make an appointment for you? Can I go with you, depending on the relationship? If they are seeing someone, I also state that it's really important to check that it's helping. I think too often we think that too many people think that it's a one shot in this. Just because you've got one counsellor doesn't mean they're the right fit for you. It doesn't mean they're any good. So if it's not working, encourage them to see someone else. Why don't you go back to the doctor and find someone else, or find a different GP? Maybe you have to start at the beginning. But I also like to say with the encourage action, it's very much about how can I help? Is there anything I can do to help? And if they're having trouble with that, I also often try and suggest what's something you love. What's something you enjoy? What's your favourite movie? What's your favourite CD? What's your music? What's your favorite? If it's an exercise, if it's someone that loves walking, go, you know, where's a nice park that you can go and walk? What's a nice street you can walk down? It might be yummy takeaway. It might be, you know, these little, can you go and buy yourself some flowers tonight? Like, just think of something little that will make them feel maybe a little bit better, just something to make them feel positive about doing something. It might be, can I come over and just sit with you? We don't have to talk. Can I come and watch the football with you? Can I come and watch a movie or TV show with you? Just think of something little small. So try and encourage some sort of positive action depending on the scale. And the last step is to check in. So after you've done all this amazing work and you leave them with the encouraged action, check in with them down the track, whether it's the next day or in a week's time, whatever it might be, whatever's appropriate. Or it might be in a month. If it's someone you don't know very well and it's at work or at the gym, just sort of ask them, you know, how's things going? Like in a few months' time, even like when you next see them. But that's a really important step to just not only round off the experience and the process, and it might even lead to another "Are you okay?" conversation if they're not okay, but it's also reminding them that you did pay attention to that conversation. So think those first 3 steps might happen in half an hour. So are you following up later on? So I know sometimes I've had amazing "Are you okay?" conversations, and then I think, oh, okay, so I matter to that person, and then I don't hear from them again for 3 months, and it's like, okay, so maybe they didn't care. So so just remembering to check in with the person. So again, it's ask, listen, encourage, and then check in. So that's essentially it for this presentation, unless we've got some questions. But again, I just sort of remind you that it's a lot of this will seem very simple, and you know, it's really about, in many ways, it's about that sense of community that I think you guys have, which is wonderful. So, but yeah, trusting the gut and following the process and realizing that these conversations truly can save a life.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you so much, Megan. That was amazing. Just the vulnerability with your story. It was really lovely to hear. So thank you. And yeah, the message of "Are you okay?" The practical things we can take away into our daily lives with our conversations with people. I think part of having an important conversation is, yeah, how to go about it. So, you know, such great material for us to take away. Now, we've got a few minutes left. So if you'd like to ask a question to Megan, please take yourself off mute or send me a message. So send to the host and I can ask that to Megan.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind asking one quickly. Thanks a lot for that, Megan. That was great. I had a member who was in here and she got cut off, and she messaged me asking how we'll be able to access the recording. Is that going to be possible, and how do we go about that?
Yeah, I can help you with that. So what I'll do is I'll provide it so that you can pop it on your social media page, so it can be available on your Facebook page and community pages. So yeah, so it'll be there for everybody to access.
That was great.
Thanks, Anthony. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, just a thank you message for Megan.
Thanks,
Thank
Josh,
you.
I can see that. And if it's something, sometimes these conversations, or you might, you know, if other people watch the recording, feel free to, Zoe's got my details, so I'm very happy to Zoe to be the go-between, and I'm happy to sort of give any thoughts if anyone wants that. So yeah, I don't disappear completely.
We've got about 2 minutes left. Megan, just in regard to how to ask for help, it's probably a big, could be another presentation. And I know
Yeah, that's the Beyond Blue. Maybe I do the Beyond Blue.
Yeah. If you've got just any tips on, you know, how to ask help?
Yeah, so important to say, and we do in the presentation, there's normally a slide, well, there's a slide of Beyond Blue and Lifeline are really critical resources. So I think it's about not feeling ashamed or stigma. My biggest thing is, I like to say, I did a podcast recently and I said, my takeaway was that you deserve to be well and happy. And I think that was something I didn't even think I deserved. So believe you deserve and you can be well. So do reach out for help. Sometimes, yeah, you don't have the right connection. So yeah, get onto a GP as a starting point. But again, Beyond Blue and Lifeline. And I'd even say that to someone that's helping someone. So during the Are You OK presentation, Are You OK conversation, sorry, presentation. If someone's, at crisis point, feel free for you to call up Lifeline as well and say, I'm talking to someone and they're showing these signs, or they are the people that are skilled and trained in this stuff. So please use these things as resources. But also Beyond Blue has amazing resources, and you can even do checklists, an online checklist of all these symptoms over a certain amount of time to even gauge you about, okay, now's the time to see a doctor.
Brilliant. Thanks, Megan.
Pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll wrap that up. Again, thank you so much, Megan, for sharing today. Thank you for everyone that attended. We will have the resources available on your social media pages. And like Megan said, if you want to reach out to myself or Megan at all, please contact me and I can get you guys connected. And Megan is on social media as well. What's your handle? Megan Barrow.
It's Megan Barrow .anxiety.
That's the one. So we'll
try and get that keyword in.
We'll have that for you guys as well. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, thank you so much for being a part. See you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.